Behind every wellness product is a promise: more energy, deeper sleep, sharper focus. But what if that promise is a lie? In 2015, investigators cracked open a dozen store-brand herbal supplements. 4 out of 5 contained none of the herb on the label. That's not a misprint, that's fraud in a capsule. Welcome to the unregulated Wild West of supplements and wellness gadgets, where some products can change your life, and others can quietly steal your trust, your money, and your health. In this episode, we decode the secret world of certification labels. The real shields that protect you from heavy metals, hidden stimulants, and electrical fire risks. Some labels mean purity, others, just marketing fluff. From red light panels to mushroom capsules, we'll show you how to vet what you buy. Like a regulator, think like a biohacker, and shop like your life depends on it. Because when it comes to your health, you're not just trusting the label, you're trusting the lab behind it. Now streaming on the Metabolic KO Show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the MKO Show. My name is Earl Mann, and I have the pleasure of being your host today. Today, I have a returning guest. Clark, how are you?
We're doing good, Earl. How's your day going?
My day is going great. And for those of you who do not know Clark Henderson, he is a functional nutrition clinician. He's a supplement broker, and he's a self-proclaimed bioalchemist. I love saying that. So today we're going to talk about a pretty big challenge in the supplement world, one that many people are aware of and many people are not. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to paint for you the reality of the supplement world right now. So, and then we're going to go through, we're going to talk about third-party validation and what that is and why it makes sense and what to look for. But to help you understand the value of that, here is the state of our universe, the state of the nation, if you will. So first of all, the world of the supplement industry is not regulated, which actually means there's no law that actually says that what's in a product needs to be accurately stated on the bottle or box of that product. So let's start with that whole wild, wild west. But let's assume that most people do the right thing because people now know to look for labels to see what's in the product. So, but just so you know how real that is, I remember there was a study done once, Clark, where some watchdog agency went to big box stores like Target, Walmart, that kind of thing, and just randomly pulled different vitamins off the shelf, random. And then they tested them, and they were just regular things like echinacea is the one I remember. But they tested all these different brands of echinacea, and it turned out that more than you might want to imagine had just ground up houseplants. Many of them had zero echinacea in the product at all. So part of the challenge in the supplement world is there are products that you can go to the store and buy, and online it's worse. You can go online to Amazon or to these different places, TikTok Shop and all these places. Product's going to look pristine. They're going to have this nice label, and the label may not have anything to do with what's actually in the product, and that's a thing. So, but before we get into some of the challenges with labeling, let's talk about how to even approach a label, because different people know different things. So I'm going to assume people don't know anything at all. So when you look at the label on a product, the guidance is that products are listed in order of abundance in that product. So the first enlisted ingredient makes up most of what's in that product. The second one is the second most abundant thing. The third is the third most abundant thing. All the way down to the last thing in that list is the smallest amount in that particular product. Just using that alone, you may be surprised when you go to the grocery store and you look at the front of the box or the bottle and compare it to the back of the bottle. Because on the front, you're going to see things like heart healthy, you know, bone health, heart this, brain food, all this stuff. And then when you look on the back, you're going to see some of those one, first or second or third ingredients might not even be good for what they say it is on the front of the bottle. Very
Correct.
often, many of the most popular supplements within their first two ingredients are going to be sugar or many of the different ways that they describe the name of sugar or salt or preservative even. I mean, you'll
Yep.
be amazed at where these things show up in the little. So the first takeaway for those that didn't know is to realize that things are in the order of abundance. So here are some of the problems we're gonna help you make you aware of with labeling. The first one is the biggest one. Labels may or may not have anything to do with what's in the product. You have to find a way to trust a brand. Once you trust a brand, you can trust that what's on their label is accurate. So let's get into what's actually on the label. So many things will hit the news as things that are great for you. Like there are tons of new products. One of my favorite products is Cognizant. It's a nootropic, it's acetylcholine, it's a branded, clinical tested thing. That's one of my favorite products. But here's what some supplement companies will do. They will look for the products that they know you look for, right? Like for me, they know, okay, supplement for people that like nootropics, they're going to look for that word. They're going to look for it. And then when you look at the clinical studies of these products, they have an efficacious dose, right? There's a certain dose of an ingredient that creates the result in a clinical study or a human trial, right?
Yes.
And more often than not, you will see the buzzword of the ingredient that has this great result in a clinical study, but the dosage product will not be the dosage in the study.
Yes.
So that's another problem we have. The problem we have is people listing things on a label because they know you're looking for them, but they just list them on a label. They may have half the amount of less than half. They may have 10% of what's actually required to get a result. And Clark, I see you shaking your head, so I know you know these things. So
Yes.
I'm just setting up the big nasty Frankenstein problem that we have when we go to our vitamin store. We go online, that's even worse. Um,
Absolutely.
online is really bad because they're so removed from the customer, they know they can get away with it, and they know all they have to do is put the picture of that label, put the buzzwords. You see all the magic ingredients you're looking for. The price is great. You order it, and they'll sell 10,000 of them in a week. And then if they need to, they can close down shop, and they're off in the moonlight and relaunching as a whole different company 2 weeks from now. It's crazy. So here's the other thing you need to see. I'm just giving you my pet peeves, and then Clark, when you go through the third-party validations, you can hit your pet peeves as well. Another pet peeve is there are things like that are completely misleading, like natural flavoring. You read something that says natural flavoring, you automatically assume it to be healthy and good and natural.
Not at all.
That's not what that means. That's actually an ingredient term that means that the things that mostly drive the flavor profile comes from plant or animal, but they do not have to disclose the other things they put in their natural flavoring to make their natural flavoring their thing, which could be preservatives,
Yep.
chemicals,
Could be
a
anything.
bunch of things. So that's super misleading. The last pet peeve, and I'll get off my soapbox. This is super popular, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but the bad guys tend to use a lot of it. The proprietary blend.
Yes. I was
So
going to talk
a
about that too.
proprietary blend means so that's when, remember how they take all these super great ingredients that they know you're looking for, and then they'll come up with their proprietary blend that includes, and all of those super ingredients will be listed. But here's the thing, the rules of the proprietary blend are not the same as the most abundant order rules on the label. They do not have to tell you how much of each ingredient in their proprietary blend makes up their proprietary blend. So now we're back to a problem within a challenge wrapped in a quagmire, right? Because you now have a sub-label on a label that can list anything, and in a sub-label that doesn't even apply to those rules, and nothing in those rules say that they have to then match up to the research. So this is a big problem. So I wanted to create this big, nasty problem to really build the value in a very simple solution to help mitigate that. Enter left, third-party validation. Third-party lab validation and accreditation and all these different things. So, Clark, with that, I created Frankenstein. I just created the real world monster. So
Yes.
now I'd love for you to introduce people to what is third-party validation, kind of how it works, what are some examples of it, and then we'll take it from there.
Oh, absolutely. So I'll expand out on some of the topics you kind of went through and introduced in this. So, for instance, the proprietary blends is something I have a pet peeve on that with as well. Part of the problem is if we're trying to go through and look at a product and try to figure out what it was that actually worked with us. Let's say it still is a good product. Let's say they have the third-party validations, verifications, they pass all of the tests that we need. At the end of the day, I don't know what it is in that product that actually impacted my health because it's disguised under that proprietary blend. And just like what you talked about, where typically whatever is the most in that product would be listed there at the top and they'd work their way down. We don't have that with a proprietary blend. Typically, that is the last thing that's on that label, and we have no idea what any of those amounts are. There could be something in that proprietary blend that actually is the biggest dose in that, and we have absolutely no idea. The other reason why a lot of them like to do that is because they don't want people to copy what their formula is. So typically, the way I've kind of looked at that is if I have a company that does give what typically would be a proprietary blend and they just kind of out everything in the open, I typically look at them with a little bit higher regard because they're completely see through. I can see exactly what should be in there. And if I wanted to go through and pay for my own testing, theoretically, more or less what's on that label, I should be able to go through and verify that that's exactly what's in that product versus the proprietary blend is a little bit more of a guessing game. And if we're going to go through and kind of expand out a little bit more, part of the reason why we want third party verification is because a lot of products are completely mislabeled. They can put banned drugs in them. There's a lot of issues with toxic heavy metals that are in those products. And just like what you brought up earlier with your echinacea, sometimes there is absolutely zero active ingredient, or sometimes they do more of a bait and switch. Something that's common with rhodiola products is there's a lot of different types of rhodiola. Typically, the one that most people put in their products is rhodiola rosea. So a lot of third-party testing would find is that some of these rhodiola rosea products were putting different types of rhodiola in there, which do not have the same effects as rhodiola rosea. As you're talking about the efficacious dose, if you're putting in and switching out different herbs that are in there, you're not going to have the actual effect you're looking for. And if we want to kind of dive into a real world example, back in 2015, the New York Attorney General actually ran a supplement sting. And this might have been where you got your echinacea example from. I'm not sure. It's not like there's only one time they've done this, but what they found is 4 out of 5 different store brand herbal supplements contain none of the actual herb that was advertised on the bottle. And so I don't know about you, but if I'm going to go through and spend my money, I want to make sure I'm actually buying what I'm paying for. And I don't want to go through and have a bait and switch or, someone selling me, sawdust in a capsule. So when we start kind of diving into that, I kind of like to go through and split everything into roughly about 3 tiers of different third-party validation that we would go through and find within all these different products. So the first tier is going to be foundational safety and identity. Tier 2 is going to be performance and purity. And tier 3 is going to be lifestyle and ethics. And so depending on where you fall, some of these are kind of going to vary in importance to you personally. But in general, these are going to me, be some of the most important ones that kind of you'd really want to look for in a product. So there's also going to be a few acronyms that we're going to kind of they're going to pull up multiple times, probably within this conversation as well as future ones. So if you see these are going to be kind of better companies to keep an eye out for to make sure that you have a good product on your hands. And if you don't see these names on there, then you might want to kind of second guess yourself on whether this is a legitimate product or not. So One of the first ones is actually going to be, it's called the NSF, which is the National Science Foundation. A lot of your sports teams are going to go through and use certifications from NSF. A second one is going to be the American National Standards Institute. And this is usually going to be ANSI for short. Both of these groups don't only just do supplements, they actually kind of do a broad spectrum certifications for a lot of things within the US and just kind of industries worldwide. But we're going to be really just talking about them more for the supplements and later on with some of our electronic devices that we use. One of the most important ones within this spectrum is going to be the NSF ANSI 173 GMP certification. So what this certifies is that the factory itself is following good manufacturing practices, and this is actually going to be via independent audits. So what we mean by that is, if you guys remember in our previous episode, we kind of talked about a lot of companies like to verify themselves. And I kind of look at that as the foxes in the hen house saying that all the hens are safe. I'd rather have an independent third party come in and be like, yep, all the hens in there are safe. They're all good. Everybody's laying eggs. Everybody's happy. The fox is not eating anybody. But a lot of times companies don't do that. So this is saying that they actually did do that. Everybody's safe. Another test is going to be similar to this, is going to be the USP verified test. And so what that test is actually saying is that the potency that's on the label and the fact that what's in there dissolves properly. So you have a product that you actually can go through and you can use. Outside of that, these are going to be kind of more test based in the US, but there's also international certification. So not all products are only made in the US, not all products are only sold in the US. So there's another company that's called ISO, which is the International Certification Company. And what they're looking for is going to be an ISO 17025 accreditation. What that means is that the lab methods themselves are proven to be valid. So it's not just them saying, oh, hey, this is what we're throwing into the product, this is what we're supposed to go through and do. They actually go through and third party verify that what that supplement is supposed to go through and do has been completely proven. And this is going to go into some of the device manufacturing as well. So if we're looking at devices, we're going to be looking at a UL or ETL marks. These are going to be nationally recognized testing labs, and these provide seals for basic electrical safety. And then if we're looking at medical devices, we're going to be looking at an FDA 510K clearance, which is going to show that the device is at least safe and effective as an already approved predicate device. Essentially, what they're saying is that this is not a snake oil device. It is actually safe for consumers to go through and use. Does that make sense so far for you, Early? I want to make sure I don't lose anybody as we're going through.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm going to try to make those logos of those different agent certifying bodies available. I'll go back and put them into this afterwards because as we're going along, I'm hoping people take some notes, but we'll try to make it easy for them.
Well, perfect. So I'll just dive into tier two then. So this is going to be going to the performance and purity. So this is kind of going to be more geared towards your, let's say, your sports players, your athletes, because a lot of times they're professionally playing, they're drug tested, and so they're looking for NSF certified for sport. They're looking for informed sport, or typically the last one's usually going to be a BSCG drug-free seal. And what it is when you're going through and you're playing as a professional athlete, you're typically tested for at least 270 plus different banned substances, and they can't afford to go through and fail that test. So with the doc I work with, a lot of the sports players he works with, they are constantly going through these supplements to make sure they have these certifications, because the last thing they want is a player just before a big game is now banned because they didn't pass the banned substance test. If we're looking more at the devices, you're going to be looking at what's called an IEC 60601 and 1-2. What that means is that's going to be our medical grade safety for electrical devices. Typically, this is going to be more for kind of electromagnetic things for pacemakers, or to make sure the device is not going to go through and catch on fire. And then we have what's called an iOS 13485, which is a full quality system certification for medical devices. This is typically going to be found more of over in Europe than the US. The US doesn't quite have as stringent guidelines on some things. Typically, when you get more into Germany, Germany honestly is probably more of an international standard, I would say, versus the US in terms of a lot of these electrical devices. And then if we jump into tier three and we go into lifestyle and ethics, we're usually going to go through and cover more of kind of people's niche values. So we're going to have our USDA organic, non-GMO project verified, kosher, halal, GFCO gluten free. So what we're doing is we're trying to address some of the religious concerns people might have, more of the natural concerns people might have. If people have different food allergies, this is going to go through and take care of all of that. So we're not guaranteeing potency or the purity of the active ingredients in those products. But we are saying is that whatever the personal values are that person might have, these are seals of approval that would meet what that person is looking for.
That is great. That is really good. So one of the questions that some people may be thinking in their minds, and I want to talk about it, is it absolutely a requirement for a company that makes a high quality supplement to have these third-party valid certifications? And the answer is no. They may not have them. And the reason why they may not have them is because they're very expensive to get.
Correct.
But if they do have them, you're minimizing the trust factor that you need to rely upon, that at a minimum, let's not even get to does it do what it says it does. I mean, at a minimum, you're just saying at least what it says is in the product is in the product, right?
Correct.
But I will also say that the more of these certifications a company tends to have, the more they are committed to investing into validating that they are who they claim to be in terms of the product. And it probably is much more likely people that are zealot about their reputation,
Yes.
you can pretty much assure that they're going to have the amounts of the ingredients to get the right result, because they're spending so much money trying to show you that these are super high quality ingredients and this is what's in the product. For
Absolutely.
those of you that fancy yourself sleuths or want to do a little CSI, many supplements now link to the research on their products. But here's the thing to pay attention to. Follow the link. And then when you follow the link, see if your product is listed, the product you're trying to buy, or it's just the ingredient listed. Which, if just the ingredient is listed, that's fine. But look at the dosage that's used in the actual research. And then go back and see, does that match up with what's in the label? I can tell you, Clark, there's nothing that takes the air out of my little happy bubble, man. When I see a new brand comes on the market and you look at the front of the bottle with all the sexy words and all the right stuff, and you look on the back and you see, oh my gosh, they have all the stuff. And then you look over at the dosage and you realize, like, oh crap, there's not enough of these things in here to literally do anything.
Nope. Just sounds good.
Anything.
Looks good on the label, but
It
doesn't
looks
do
great
anything.
on the label, and some of those are more hype. Believe it or not, I've seen some of those products with what I would argue to be the least likely chance of having an impact sell at the highest, as a premium.
Correct.
They might be twice as much as the same type of product sitting next to them.
Just because they have good marketing.
So it's just really, really good marketing, folks. And unfortunately, online it is truly the Wild Wild West, because it is very easy to stand up a product in nutrition right in today. If I wanted to have my own branded product in nutrition, I literally could have that in a store, like an actual product in the store with the label and the brand and everything online. I don't know, 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks.
Less.
Yeah,
With all the different white
less
label
than 2 weeks. A lot of these things are so turnkey. I could probably, today is Monday, I could probably have something available by Friday if I really, really pushed it. But, and I'm not even saying that's a bad thing, but you need to know what you're looking at when you look at things, right? Because one thing that's becoming very popular that I'm actually a fan of are branded ingredient stacks. So branded ingredients, like I gave an example earlier, Cognizant is an example of that.
Yes.
There are a lot of different versions of acetylcholine, but there's one brand that has taken its acetylcholine and done all these clinical trials and testing, et cetera, and it gave that acetylcholine a trademark name, so that if you're looking on a product and you see it listed, you know exactly what it is. And that also makes it easy for me to look at that product. I know what it is, and I know what that efficacious dose is, like what the research dose should be. So I can say, okay, great, I get it. This is on the level, right? So I'm hoping that this was helpful because, as it stands right now, and maybe things will change, um, almost anything goes in the air. And there's some good at characters out there. Like one of my favorite companies out there is a company called New Earth. And I've never seen a company more committed to that have 10 different third-party validations on everything. I've met the owners. We're longtime friends now, but they were the ones that really opened my eyes to how complicated some of these certifications are to get. And they're not like you just fill out a form and send it in. And the good ones aren't ones that you just pay 100, 6 figures and they just slap it on because you pay. Yeah, you may pay 6 figures, but then you have to let them come in and inspect your factory. They come in and they ran some of these agencies pull random product, not only out of the boxes in your warehouse, off the shelving in stores. And they take all of these different things to the lab and they break down the lab and they look at the lab reports and then they have a rating. Does what's on the label match what's in the bottle? So it's a very complicated thing to do. In fact, most new supplement companies won't be able to afford to do that without
No,
massive funding because it's more those certifications in many cases will cost more than it does to actually make the product
correct.
in many cases. And so when you look at companies that has 2 and 3 and 4 and 10 and and more of all of these different third-party validating bodies, a couple of things. That company is committed to being transparent. They're committed in protecting the brand, and they have no problem at all having somebody else tell you what's in their product. So if you can start to look at some of those certifying organizations, pick the ones that kind of match. You did a good job of breaking down kind of what's what, Clark. Some may mean more to others than that. Like if you're an athlete and you get drug tested, NSF for sport may be something you want to zoom in on because that says there's nothing in that product that's been banned from like Olympic competition and things like that. So these third-party validate and here in our hydration station, our ionizing machines and the filters we use, all of those have multiple third-party certifying bodies that have reports available on what they test for and all these different things. So, we're living in a world of receipts. The young people do this on social media all the time. They make a claim and then they show proof of the claim they make, right? They call it showing receipts. So in the world of supplements, because it is not regulated, you need to look for some type of receipts. Or you need to find your own path to trusting a brand. If you can trust a brand and you know what's behind that brand, then you may not need all these different third-party valid. Like Clark, if you were to launch your own supplement company, whether you had all these third-party validation certifications or not, I would know that your label is legit because I know who you are. But in most cases, you don't know the people making the stuff we're buying online. You definitely don't know.
No.
Because a lot of those companies didn't even exist 90 days ago or
Yes,
6 months
exactly.
ago. They literally wait for a new product to become hot, a new ingredient thing to become hot, and you will see 3 companies launched in that industry, in that segment, with that product on the label, because they know you're looking for it, and all of the barriers between you and them I just mentioned makes it very, very, very hard to catch the bad guy. So.
Oh, definitely.
So
Well,
with that, if you want to see an example of what that looks like, I'm going to create a link. I didn't even create the link yet, but it will be, I don't know what's going to be available with those domain names. I would tell you now, but I don't really know what's going to be available. What's a good name for third? So I'm going to guess that HSLV, which is the company that kind of are behind this whole MKO show effort, Hydration Station, Las Vegas. HSLV 3 Party. I'm pretty sure that domain is going to be available. HSLV3Party.com. And that will take you over to an example of a company, not only a company that has a bunch of these certifications behind it, if you want to see what they look like. And that's a good company to model. If you want to see what somebody on the high end of that spectrum looks like on what the labels, just go to that follow that link, look at the company's products, look on the back of the bottle, and look at all the certifications they have. And then that will be in a nutrition store called Golden Health Quest, of which, Clark, I know you're part of the big vetting process behind that platform. I would venture to say the 95% of everything available on that site has multiple third-party validations. So if you're lazy and you just want to go to a place where everything has already been vetted by the people that vet the vetters, that's an easy way to do it too. But you don't have to do any of those things. You can just learn these labels, learn which ones you want to personally look for, and they all are visible on the back of the bottles or the boxes of the things you buy. And if you're going to buy things from generally available places like big box stores like Target and Walmart, you definitely need to know what you're looking for. And if you want to go into the wild, wild west of anything goes, which is Amazon and TikTok shop, then you definitely need to find a way other than reviews. I know everybody think because a company has 500 reviews, I know you think that means the product works. It probably means somebody knew how to autobot generate 500 reviews is what that means, probably, or pay 500 people to write reviews. I mean, this whole thing is this game thing is crazy. And there are companies that look at what's trending and literally create counterfeit products. Buy the actual brand name.
Correct.
The same brand name, same look, same trademark, same feel. The only thing that will be different is where you're buying it from if you're not paying attention. They put that much effort into hoodwinking you or stealing from you because there's so much money in that product, especially when they don't have to pay for real ingredients to be in the product. It's all profit to them.
Oh,
So be careful. I painted a bleak picture, but I'm also a massive screaming, raising, believing fan in supplementation. I I do not believe, and this is my zealotness, I don't think it's possible to get every nutritional nutrient you need to be optimal from a regular diet. I know people are going to push back on that, and here comes the people in the comments and going to say, no, all you need to do is eat healthy. But I'm going to tell you that you go pick a modern apple in 2025 or a modern vegetable in 2025, and you look at the nutritional breakdown of that plant that you've taken from the ground, and you match it to that plant's profile in the 1950s, and you're basically looking at two completely different things in terms of nutrition. So if
exactly.
you think you
Completely
can just
different.
eat right because you go to a store and the vegetables are nice and bright and shiny, you might be misled. You might be grossly misled. So Clark, any passing thoughts? This was great, by the way. Thank you.
I think I'll just expand out on some of the other ideas you brought up. One, definitely just like what you talked about. A lot of the counterfeits are coming directly from China. They will take, I've seen this happen with practitioner brands, where typically the only way you'd get is you'd have to go into a doctor of some sort who has a wholesale account set up with whatever that company is, and they will replicate the entire brand and sell it on Amazon or other random third party sites. And it doesn't have any of the actual product in there. It's not linked to the actual distributor. It's pretty much sawdust in the capsule. So you have to really make sure if you are shopping on Amazon for your supplements, you really got to see if there's ways you can go through and vet that information, see if it actually links back to a legitimate storefront from whatever that brand is. If it's not, chances are it's probably a fake product.
Yeah.
One of the other things is I know you and I, we're both pretty familiar with New Earth. They have really good products. They have a lot of the extra certifications, just like what you're talking about. They have the NSF, they have the CGMP, they have the USDA organic. They have a lot of those extra labels And what a lot of people might not realize is, let's say if we talk about the NSF certification, those people that do that certificate, they don't announce when they're going to come in and certify your lab or your company or whenever they're going through to do that. They just kind of show up. So it's kind of like when you have the health inspector at a restaurant here in Vegas, right? They don't go through and call up to the company and be like, hey, just so you know, by the way, we're going to be here tomorrow at 11 a.m. Make sure everything is clean. They just pop in and then you just have to be ready for them. So these are companies that are paying for these certifications and passing those certifications when they didn't have any time to go through and preemptively make sure everything was all good to go. They already were doing it consistently and keep passing those same tests. So that's why a lot of these third-party validations are really important, and why me and Earl are fans of companies that go through and do that extra step to make sure that they're really having what they say is in the products.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a big deal, and it's going to become even more and more and more of a big deal as people are becoming more and more smart about. There's just a lot of, the cat's out of the bag that, imagine this, those vitamins do work. They can make a difference. Imagine that, right? Imagine that. Super athletes are taking a lot of supplements. Imagine that, right? It's not just hocus pocus and placebo. So, with that, my friends, I hope you got something out of this. I highly encourage you to just get your own personal plan. You don't have to, you can go, follow the link and look at a good example of a lot of those things. I'm going to see if I can go back and weave some of the logos into this video. So by the time you see it, you can just memorize what to look for. And then just realize what you're up against and have a plan and be smart about it. But um, just to take a random new company that you've never heard of at face value because they have listed the things that you are looking for, you're basically exactly who they are building those fake products for. You're the perfect person for that, right? So, and it, people may fake a label, but less people will fake those certifications because there's legal liability. There is law and regulation around misrepresenting other companies. So there might not be laws around, putting magic pixie dust as an ingredient on your label. But if the minute you say this has been validated by that body, if that didn't happen, that body is going to come after them. So there's some checks and balances. So Clark, I appreciate you as always, my friend. Thanks for sharing.
Not a problem. Glad to be on your show, Earl.
All right, guys, and everybody, we will see you soon.